So what is it? Did you ever expect you would be back on Dallas?
Never. Who would have thought?
No one knew the real drama on Dallas happened off-screen. At 84, Linda Gray confessed the brutal truth. 22-hour workdays left her in a back brace. Male co-stars earned millions more. And when she asked to direct, producers tried to destroy her career. But that's not even the darkest secret. This is the shocking story of what it really took to be Sue Ellen Ewing. Linda Ann Gray was born on September 12, 1940, in Santa Monica, California. At the time, World War II was happening, and life in America was very different. People didn't make much money, and gas cost only 11 cents per gallon. But Santa Monica was a beautiful place to grow up. It had beaches, a famous pier, and was growing fast. More and more people were moving there, and everything was changing. She spent most of her childhood in Culver City, which was very close to Hollywood. Her father, Leslie Gray, was a watchmaker. His job required patience and attention to detail, and those were qualities Linda later used in acting. Culver City was full of movie studios. Some of the most famous movies ever made, like Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz, were filmed there. Even though she wasn't in the industry yet, she was surrounded by it every day. Her father's shop was an important place in town. Back then, watches weren't cheap or disposable. People needed a good watchmaker, and Leslie Gray was one of the best. Linda spent a lot of time there, watching her father carefully fix tiny gears and springs. She didn't realize it at the time, but watching him work would later help her as an actress. Her family didn't have a lot of money, but they lived comfortably. She went to Notre Dame Academy, a Catholic school that focused on academics and the arts. In 1955, she acted for the first time in a school play, playing Cinderella. She was nervous, but something about performing made her want to do it again. That small school play was the beginning of something big. Because Culver City was so close to Hollywood, she sometimes met famous actors. When she was 15, she had a quick but memorable moment with Lucille Ball at a local drugstore. The famous redhead complimented Linda's auburn hair. It was a small thing, but it stuck with her. It made her realize that celebrities were just people. Maybe she could be one too. In the early 1960s, she took her first step into the entertainment world. Not as an actress, but as a model. She was waiting at a bus stop when a talent scout noticed her. She had a striking look, standing at 5 feet 7 inches with strong features. That moment led to her first modeling job in 1961. She posed for a small clothing boutique and made $25 for the day. It wasn't much, but it was a start. By 1963, she had signed with the Ford modeling agency and was appearing in print ads for big brands. She had a face that could fit anything: fashion, beauty, household products. One of her most successful early jobs was a Coca-Cola ad in 1964. Her smile alone helped boost sales in Southern California by 8%. Television commercials were exploding in the 1960s, and she was the perfect fit. Between 1965 and 1975, she appeared in 387 commercials. This made her one of the most recognizable faces in advertising. People in the industry even called her the Queen of Commercials. One of her highest-paying jobs was for Playtex bras in 1968. She only worked for 3 days, but she was paid $50,000, an amount that would be worth over $370,000 today. Her success wasn't just in the U.S. In 1969, she became one of the first American models to appear in Japanese commercials. She starred in an ad for Shiseido Cosmetics, which aired all across Asia. This made her even more well-known and opened doors for her in acting. One of the strangest and most unexpected moments of her career happened in 1967, but no one knew about it at the time. That year, The Graduate was released, and its movie poster became one of the most famous in history. The poster showed Dustin Hoffman standing in the foreground with a woman's leg stretching across the frame. For years, everyone thought that leg belonged to Anne Bancroft, who played Mrs. Robinson in the movie. But in 2013, Linda Gray revealed the truth. It was actually her leg. The photo shoot happened on August 19, 1967, at Paramount Studios. Anne Bancroft wasn't available that day, so the studio called Linda at the last minute. She was 27 years old, and she had no idea she was about to be part of something historic. For 3 hours, she held her leg in position while the photographer, Bob Peake, took over 100 pictures. Finally, they got the shot. She was paid just $25 for the job, about $200 in today's money. She signed a standard release form, and that was it. No one ever gave her credit. The poster went on to become one of the most recognizable images in film history, selling millions of copies. For decades, the truth was a secret. Even Dustin Hoffman didn't know. When he found out in 2016, he was completely shocked. Linda laughed about it, joking, "I've been paid more for my legs than for my acting." But her connection to The Graduate wasn't over. In 2001, when she was 61 years old, she was cast as Mrs. Robinson in the London stage production of The Graduate. Linda Gray's entry into acting was unexpected. In 1962, at 22 years old, she got her first Hollywood job, but not in the way most people do. She wasn't on screen with lines or a character. Her leg was. She was hired as the body double for Anne Bancroft's leg in the Graduate movie poster. The reason? The designers thought her leg looked better. In 1963, she finally started landing small roles in films, but even those didn't go smoothly. She was cast in Under the Yum Yum Tree as a college girl. At first, she had lines, but right before filming, they were cut. The reason was ridiculous. Jack Lemmon, the film's star, felt she was too naturally charismatic and didn't want her taking attention away from him. She never talked about this for years. That same year, she appeared in Palm Springs Weekend, but only because she happened to be visiting a friend on set. The director saw her and gave her a small role right then and there. But there was a problem. She wasn't part of the Screen Actors Guild, so they secretly paid her in cash to avoid union issues. By the 1970s, she was getting guest roles on TV, but nothing came easy. In Marcus Welby, MD, she was supposed to play a strong, confident woman. But just 2 days before filming, the writers changed her role completely. Now she was a vulnerable patient instead. The reason? The show's lead, Robert Young, wanted his character to have more emotional scenes, so they rewrote her part to fit that. She had to memorize a whole new script overnight. It was stressful, but she pulled it off, and producers were impressed. One of the strangest moments in her early career happened while filming Switch in 1976. She had a scene where she had to slap Robert Wagner. He insisted that she actually hit him for real, so she did. When they filmed the final take, she slapped him so hard it left a mark on his face. The tension on set was obvious, but instead of being upset, people respected her for how real the scene looked. Then, in 1977, she took on a groundbreaking role. She was cast as Linda Merkland in All That Glitters, a show created by Norman Lear. The role was history-making. She played a transgender woman, the first time a trans character had ever been a regular on an American TV series. But this casting was kept a secret until the last minute. When she found out, she was hesitant. She even thought about quitting. Norman Lear convinced her by arranging a meeting with a trans woman from San Francisco. After a long conversation, Gray changed her mind. To prepare for the role, she did something extreme. she spent 2 weeks living as a man. She bound her chest and practiced acting masculine. One day, while dressed this way, she tried to use a women's restroom and was denied entry. That moment gave her a deep understanding of the struggles trans people faced. The show was bold for its time. It imagined a world where gender roles were reversed, but people weren't ready for it. Advertisers pulled out before it even aired, and some TV stations refused to broadcast it. One scene caused major controversy, a flashback showing Linda Merkland before transitioning. Instead of casting a different actor, they used heavy makeup and prosthetics on Grey to create the effect. At the time, this was seen as groundbreaking, but looking back, some criticized the choice not to hire a trans actor. The show didn't last long. It was canceled after just 13 weeks, but it had a lasting impact. Grey received hundreds of letters from trans viewers who said it was the first time they saw someone like them on TV. One letter, from a 16-year-old in Ohio, moved her so much that she became an advocate for LGBTQ+ rights. Then came Dallas. In 1978, Grey landed the role that changed her life, Sue Ellen Ewing. But she almost didn't get the part. The role was first offered to another actress, Mary Fran, who turned it down. Grey didn't even know she was being considered. Her agent submitted her photo without telling her. When she got called in for an audition, she had no time to prepare. So, she quickly borrowed a Southern accent she had overheard at a grocery store earlier that day. That improvisation impressed the producers, and she got the job. At first, Sue Ellen wasn't supposed to be a major character. Grey was only hired for 5 episodes, just as J.R. Ewing's wife. But her performance was so powerful that the writers expanded her role. By the end of the season, Sue Ellen had become one of the most complex and fascinating characters on the show. Dallas wasn't just a TV show. It was a global obsession. Over 90 countries aired it, and in 1980, when J.R. was shot, 350 million people worldwide tuned in to find out who did it. That kind of viewership was unheard of, especially for a primetime soap opera. Even in places you wouldn't expect, the show made a huge impact. In communist Romania, the government let it air, thinking it would show how bad capitalism was. But instead of turning people against wealth, it did the opposite. People saw luxury, freedom, and power, and they wanted it. Some even say Dallas helped fuel the fall of communism. In the Soviet Union, where it was banned, fans still found a way. Smuggled VHS tapes spread through the black market, and people gathered in secret just to watch grainy episodes. The show didn't just entertain, it even influenced politics. During the 1980 U.S. election, people worried the "Who Shot J.R." reveal might actually affect voter turnout. The phrase was everywhere, on buttons, bumper stickers, and even in political campaigns. Republicans joked, "Democrats shot J.R." Meanwhile, for people around the world, the show shaped their idea of America. It wasn't just about Texas oil barons, it was about power, ambition, and excess. Some admired it. Others thought it was everything wrong with America. Either way, it was impossible to ignore. Linda Gray's role as Sue Ellen made the show even more unforgettable. As J.R.'s alcoholic wife, she could have been just another side character, but she turned Sue Ellen into one of TV's most complex and tragic figures. Her struggle with addiction was raw and real, something rarely shown on TV at the time. She even changed how she looked for the role, skipping her usual 2-hour makeup routine and instead spending just 20 minutes to make her drunk scenes feel more authentic. One of the most intense moments came when Sue Ellen, pregnant and still battling alcoholism, escaped from a sanitarium. It was shocking, heartbreaking, and groundbreaking all at once. But Gray's performance wasn't just about showing her drunk. She captured every part of Sue Ellen's pain. The moments of clarity, the failed attempts to recover, the constant battle with her demons. She didn't just make people watch, she made them feel. Her performance didn't go unnoticed. In 1981, she was nominated for an Emmy, competing against her own co-star, Barbara Bel Geddes. She also got 2 Golden Globe nominations, proving that even in a genre often dismissed as fluff, real acting could shine. These awards weren't just personal victories. They helped give Dallas credibility and kept it at the top for years. The show ran for 14 seasons, and Gray was there for all but one. She even earned international recognition, winning Germany's Bambi Award and Italy's Il Gatto. In 1982, she was named Woman of the Year by the Hollywood Radio and Television Society, not just for her acting, but for the impact she had beyond the screen. But nothing in Dallas was bigger than Who Shot J.R. The mystery started in March 1980 when J.R. was shot in the season finale. For the next 8 months, the world was obsessed. Everyone had theories. When the answer was finally revealed in November, 83 million Americans watched. Globally, over 350 million people tuned in. It was one of the biggest TV moments ever. The phrase, "Who shot J.R.?" became a pop culture phenomenon. It was on shirts, buttons, and even discussed by world leaders. Larry Hagman, who played J.R., was asked about it by the Queen Mother herself. In the U.S., Jimmy Carter joked he could fund his campaign if he knew who did it. That single storyline changed TV forever. Before Dallas, shows didn't do cliffhangers like that, but after Who Shot J.R., everyone copied it. It became the blueprint for keeping audiences hooked. Even decades later, the impact is still there. The Simpsons even parodied it with Who Shot Mr. Burns? Linda Gray's life on the set of Dallas was far from glamorous. From 1978 to 1991, she worked exhausting 16-hour days, starting at 5 a.m. and finishing at 9 p.m., 6 days a week. It was even worse during major episodes, like the famous Who Shot J.R. scene. On July 15, 1980, she worked for a brutal 22 hours straight, from 4:30 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. the next day. The long hours took a serious toll, and to keep going, she drank around 6 cups of coffee daily just to stay awake. Physically, the job was punishing. Spending hours in high heels left her with severe back pain. By season 5, it had gotten so bad that she had to wear a back brace between takes, hidden under Sue Ellen's elaborate costumes. The early mornings made things worse. She had to be in makeup by 4 a.m. just to be ready for a 6 a.m. call time. The stress and exhaustion drained her, and by the end of each season, she had lost 10 to 15 pounds. But the mental strain was just as bad. She had to memorize up to 30 pages of dialogue a day, sometimes getting script changes only a few hours before filming. One of her worst weeks came in season 7, when she shot 18 emotional scenes in just 5 days, including Sue Ellen's dramatic drunk driving incident. The pressure led to chronic insomnia. During filming seasons, she barely slept 4 hours a night. As the years went by, Gray started clashing with the show's producers. She wanted more say in Sue Ellen's storylines, but the producers shut her down repeatedly. By the 1982 to 1983 season, her frustration boiled over. On March 15, 1983, she had a heated argument with executive producer Leonard Katzman over a scene that made Sue Ellen appear too weak. Gray refused to film it as written, and for 4 hours, she and Katzman were locked in a standoff. They eventually reached a compromise, but it damaged her relationship with the production team. She also wanted to direct episodes, But while her male co-stars, Larry Hagman and Patrick Duffy, got the chance, she was repeatedly denied. It wasn't until season 9, in an episode called Sitting Ducks, that she finally got the opportunity to direct. And even that only happened because she threatened to leave and Larry Hagman stepped in to support her. Gray also fought for better storylines. She didn't want Sue Ellen to just be JR's miserable wife. In 1989, she convinced the writers to let Sue Ellen run for political office, a change the male-dominated writing team initially rejected. Her struggle for creative input mirrored what many women faced in Hollywood at the time. Years later, Gray revealed the sexism she endured on the show. On March 8, 2023, at age 82, she told Hello magazine that Dallas was a very chauvinist show, frankly. The discrimination wasn't just subtle, it was built into the system. Her ideas were often ignored, her concerns brushed aside, and when it came to pay, she discovered that her male co-stars were earning significantly more than she was. In 1985, she found out they were making tens of thousands more per episode, adding up to millions over a season. She was a key part of the show's biggest storylines, yet she was undervalued. It was frustrating, but instead of backing down, she fought even harder. One of the biggest battles was over directing. After 7 years of playing Sue Ellen, she formally asked to direct an episode in 1985. It wasn't an unreasonable request. Both Hagman and Duffy had already directed multiple episodes. But the producers rejected her immediately. Their excuse? If they let her direct, they'd have to let all the women on the show direct. This made no sense, since Gray had already spoken to her female co-stars, and none of them had any interest in directing. The rejection wasn't about fairness, it was about keeping women out of power. She didn't give up. She approached the producers again, this time with proof of her qualifications and the support of her castmates. But once again, they refused. The more they pushed back, the more it became clear. This wasn't just about directing one episode. It was about the larger issue of women in Hollywood being denied opportunities men were freely given. Things finally reached a breaking point in 1986. During contract negotiations for Season 9, Gray made it clear, if she didn't get a chance to direct, she was leaving the show. The producers didn't try to negotiate. Instead, they fired her. It was a shocking decision. She had been nominated for an Emmy and 2 Golden Globes. She was a fan favorite, and yet they would rather lose her than give her the same opportunities as her male co-stars. But the firing didn't last long. Larry Hagman, the biggest star on the show, found out and wasn't happy. He threatened to quit if Gray wasn't rehired. The producers had no choice. They brought her back and finally let her direct. Her first episode aired on November 7, 1986, and it was a success. Over the next few seasons, she directed 3 more episodes, proving that she was just as capable behind the camera as she was in front of it. Her fight to direct wasn't just a personal victory, it was a moment that symbolized the larger battle for gender equality in Hollywood. Linda Gray married Ed Thrasher on April 28, 1962, when she was just 21. From the very first night of their honeymoon, she knew she had made a mistake. In Acapulco, Thrasher left her alone at the hotel on their first full day together. That was just the beginning. He controlled everything. When she told him she wanted to be an actress, he shut her down, saying she could only try after their kids were in college. That meant waiting nearly 20 years. She felt trapped, like she wasn't even a wife, just someone living in the same house. He made all the decisions. He wanted to live on a ranch, so they moved. He didn't care about what she wanted. She was expected to stay home, raise the kids, and support his dreams while hers didn't matter. She felt stuck, with no voice, no support, no way out. But after years of being pushed aside, she found the strength to leave. She secretly rented a place in Malibu, planned everything, and finally told Thrasher she was done. Their divorce was final on November 14, 1983. It had taken 21 years, but she was finally free. Even though the marriage had been painful, she was grateful for her 2 children. Then came the worst moment of her life. On November 23, 2020, she lost her son, Jeff Thrasher, to leukemia. He was 56. He had been fighting acute myeloid leukemia, AML, a deadly cancer. Linda announced his death on Instagram, calling him the kindest, funniest, sweetest person who was loved by everyone. He had built a career in TV as a producer and director, and she was so proud of him. Watching him go through treatment was painful, and COVID-19 made everything even harder. After he passed, she held on to the memories. Just days later, she posted about their Thanksgiving tradition, how he always carved the turkey and made his special cranberry sauce. The loss changed her. In 2022, she joined the Farrah Fawcett Foundation to help fight cancer. At an event in 2023, she admitted Jeff's death shook her to her core, and that more needed to be done. She also became a voice for leukemia awareness, sharing how AML affects 20,000 people in the U.S. each year and how survival rates are low. Losing Jeff left a hole in her life. He wasn't just her son. He was her best friend. At only 56, he was gone. All she could do now was honor him by helping others. When Dallas ended in 1989, Linda Gray had to figure out what was next. She had spent 11 years playing Sue Ellen Ewing, and now it was time for something different. In 1994, she got a role on Melrose Place, playing Hilary Michaels, the mother of Amanda Woodward, played by Heather Locklear. People liked her character so much that they created a whole new show around her. That show was Models Inc., where she played the owner of a modeling agency in Los Angeles. This was a big change from Sue Ellen. Instead of playing a vulnerable woman, she was now a tough businesswoman who ran things her way. But the show had problems. It had to compete with other big TV hits, and the reviews weren't great. Even though the cast included future Matrix star Carrie-Anne Moss, it didn't work out. After just one season, Models Inc. was canceled in 1995. But Linda didn't stop there. She kept acting, taking guest roles on different shows. In 1997, she appeared in Touched by an Angel, playing a grieving mother. A few years earlier, she had spent some time in the UK, acting in Lovejoy from 1992 to 1994, where she played Lady Jane Felsham in 9 episodes. She also did TV movies, including Moment of Truth, Why My Daughter, which tackled teenage pregnancy, and Accidental Meeting, a thriller about stalking. These roles let her show that she wasn't just a soap opera star, she could play all kinds of characters. Then she did something completely different. In 2001, she took on the famous role of Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate, performing live on stage in London's West End. She was 60 years old and stepping into a role that was not only famous, but also included a nude scene that had everyone talking. She performed 8 shows a week for 4 months, proving she could hold her own in theater. People loved her performance so much that she was invited to Broadway in 2002, where she briefly replaced Kathleen Turner. This role meant a lot to her because, years earlier, it was actually her legs, not Anne Bancroft's, that were used in the famous Graduate movie poster. It was like coming full circle. After that, she continued working on stage. In 2007, she played Aurora Greenaway in Terms of Endearment, a stage version of the Oscar-winning movie. The play toured across the UK, showing that she was serious about theater. Then, in 2014, after the Dallas reboot was canceled, she took on a completely different role, playing the fairy godmother in Cinderella in London. From playing the seductive Mrs. Robinson to a magical fairy godmother, she proved she could do anything. But acting wasn't the only thing she cared about. In 1998, she became a Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations Population Fund. This wasn't just a title. She was actively involved in helping women's health issues around the world. She traveled to different countries, meeting women and listening to their struggles. Even before she was officially given the role, she went to Nicaragua in 1997, visiting hospitals, health centers, and rural villages to see the challenges women faced. She worked on issues like reproductive health, gender equality, and stopping harmful practices like female genital mutilation. She wasn't a politician or a doctor, but she believed that listening to people was the first step to making change. She stayed in this role until 2007, proving that she wasn't just an actress, she was someone who wanted to make a real difference. Then, in 2015, she added another achievement. She became an author. She wrote a book called The Road to Happiness is Always Under Construction. It wasn't just a celebrity story, it was part memoir, part life guide. She shared personal struggles, from dealing with polio as a child to growing up with an alcoholic mother and being in an emotionally abusive marriage. One of the most shocking parts of the book was about her 22-year marriage to Ed Thrasher. She talked about how, for 16 years, she followed his rules until she finally decided to take an acting class. That decision changed her life and led her to Dallas. She also shared advice about health, organic eating, which she had been doing long before it was trendy, and how to age with confidence. The book got good reviews because it was honest and inspiring. Some critics thought she praised herself too much or was too hard on her ex-husband, but most people appreciated how open she was. The book led to interviews and speaking events, where she continued to encourage women to take control of their lives.